I'm so happy that you took the time to celebrate the World Tai Chi and Qigong Day with us today. Our summit brought to you over a dozen of excellent practitioners of Tai Chi and Qigong, all of whom graduated from Academy of Qidao, the first and only school in the world offering professional education in Qigong coaching. And our graduates shared with you some of their insights and personal experiences exploring the energy arts, which of course I hope you will dive deeper into and explore with us. Now, today's celebration didn't go without some technical challenges as well as surprises. And one of these surprises was that my student, Dr. Ionescu, decided to turn tables on me. That's right, Carmen decided to interview me instead of being interviewed by me today. Thank you so much, Carmen, for preparing some great questions. I have to say that some of her questions are some of the toughest among all the questions I've ever had to answer in any of the interviews throughout the years. So without any further ado, let me introduce to you Dr. Carmen Ionescu, who is both a medical doctor and a naturopathic physician, trained in Europe as well as the United States. So thank you, Carmen, for coming up with some good questions for me. Some of them may be even tough. I am totally happy to answer any questions that you have for me.
Lama, I would like to know from so many students you had before and you currently have, how many of them got to realization?
Self-realization?
Self-realization, yeah.
Yeah, quite a few. I would say self-realization is not a destination. It's the journey of becoming more and more self-realized. So in other words, it's not like you reach the pinnacle of self-realization at some point and you're like, okay, I'm realized, I have nothing else to realize. And on the contrary, it's discovering more and more about ourselves that is like connecting with the deeper part of the iceberg. If you imagine what we know about ourselves as just the tip of the iceberg, and the huge part of the iceberg is in the water that we don't know, well, we literally connect with more and more of ourselves and eventually realize, I am not just the iceberg. I'm one with the whole ocean. So that all of a sudden, now there is even more to explore and more to connect with and discover. So the process of self-realization is what we want to get engaged in, rather than trying to get to some place that somebody would say, now you are enlightened. Because we don't care what people say about us in terms of whether we're enlightened or not. What we do is we realize that we have to self-actualize or self-realize. Nobody's going to do it for us. And so we learn how to take full responsibility for this aspect of our spiritual journey and development. And I would say that a good 50% of my students, or maybe even a lot more, are in the journey of self-actualization.
Thank you. Yeah,
Sure.
that was interesting answer, and yeah, I think each of the students, has to know this. However, I was asking this without having a definition of what do you mean by self-realization, I mean, everybody goes to the point, the maximum it can be, but most of the people consider somebody enlightened if they have extrasensorial qualities. What do you think about that? How do you relate somebody enlightenment with extrasensorial qualities? Is that true? It is a wrong definition, wrong mentality?
Yeah, it's not quite how I would define enlightenment. It's easier to become enlightened if you operate on a greater number of channels of collecting information. But eventually, it's not about collecting the information, collecting the knowledge. It's about becoming knowledgeable. So first, you're absolutely right. We engage in a study of opening up additional sensory channels. For example, most people hear about the sixth sense. Well, we can say that sixth sense is what we call kinesthesia, kinesthetic awareness, or awareness of movement. We all have it. We all have proprioceptors throughout the whole body, but most people don't pay enough attention to it. And if you don't pay attention to that sense, well, what's the likelihood of you mastering it or even putting it to good use? Unless you're a serious athlete or martial artist or a dancer, often awareness of movement is not something that is front and center of your attention. And what also becomes interesting is that the more we pay attention to ourselves as we move, the more we discover new things about ourselves. Because, well, if you're paying attention to yourself, you're both the subject and the object of your attention. And if you don't pay attention to yourself, well, what's the likelihood of you becoming more aware of anything related to you? Probably slim to none. But if you start paying a lot of attention to how you move, how your body feels, how you feel the flow of energy in your body and around, you become more aware. And that awareness is the interface connecting the tip of the iceberg with the deeper part of the iceberg. That's also part of each and every one of us. So we developed that awareness as the quality of consciousness that allows to get to know that which we didn't know before. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, especially that sixth sense can be correlated with the sixth center in the body. I mean, it depends on which philosophy. So six energetic center or chakras.
Mm-hmm.
So that means you can have more intuition, premonition, telekinesia. That means as a master, you are a master and you are developing the sixth sense, which means you are able to pay attention to all your students. If you have 2 or 3 or 100, many, doesn't matter where they are, you are connecting with them. And
No.
You don't.
I don't do that. Maybe there are some masters
So
who
this
do
is
that.
not related to awareness.
It relates to self-awareness. So it's not like I have to keep tabs on each and every one of my students. It's more like I serve as a role model of awareness, a role model of self-realization, and demonstrate it. I walk the talk. I actually physically demonstrate how I have certain abilities or skills or knowledge that my students would like to get. If I don't have the ability to walk the talk or to demonstrate it, people probably will not believe that I have these abilities. So what kind of abilities are we talking about? Well, first of all, it's the ability to stop struggling against gravity. It's something that most people do for no good reason. I've never seen anyone win in that struggle. Some people say, oh yeah, you can levitate. Well, I honestly have never seen anyone levitating. However, I've seen a lot of people who would spend 80 or even 90% of their energy resources just struggling against gravity for no good reason. And why? Because their bodies are crooked or out of alignment. And obviously the bone structure, the skeleton, doesn't support the weight of the body. So the gravity is pulling them down, and they're resisting the pull by tensing up muscles. And muscles are never as strong as bones, and they create energy blockages which wreak havoc in our health. Any practitioner of Oriental medicine would say, yeah, energy blockages cause ill health. Well, nobody does these energy blockages to us. We do them to ourselves by holding undue tension. So that's the number one thing to explore and discover how we can actually become more relaxed so that we don't struggle against gravity. When you release tension in your muscles, something really cool happens. One, a lot more energy flows through your body. You actually start feeling like there is a greater circulation of qi happening, and you experience greater vitality. And the second thing that also happens is that when you become more relaxed, it's not just a physical relaxation. It's also mental and emotional relaxation. You become more centered. And you don't react to whatever life throws at you anymore, or you react less. You become more responsive instead of reactive. And you can imagine how quality of life changes when we become more responsive to whatever life presents to us, right?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, because I was under the impression that if you work with the master kind of has a sort of awareness about if the student is in danger, if the student somehow, I mean, like many tentacles and having all the students under the wings, and probably it's kind of fantasy of my mind.
Sounds like a fantasy. I don't want to say that this fantasy is completely unfounded. There are some masters who basically create cults, and they make it so that their students or their followers or devotees feel dependent on them. Like you said, they take them under their wing and they provide them the sense of belonging and security, and that's something that keeps them enmeshed in that cult. Well, the funny thing about cults is that it goes directly against a very important value that I personally uphold in my life, which is the value of authenticity and freedom. If I create a cult where I start controlling or at least keeping tabs on my students and make them feel like I am doing something to them in their lives, I'm not providing them the opportunity to be free and authentic. And that would basically violate my major values. Of course, people who I attract ideally also have similar values. So if people's values are that they respect authenticity and freedom, and that's what I offer to them, well, they will be happy campers. They will continue studying with me for a long time, not because I am doing something to them from a distance, but because they become more authentic and free. And who wouldn't want that?
Now my expectations were something like, like Dr. Effie Chop, being a grandmaster. I suppose that she was producing many masters, something like that.
That's what usually makes the person a grandmaster, is that their students become masters in their own right. But how does one become a master? It's not because the grandmaster dubbed you and said, okay, now you are a master. And there are plenty of schools and movements where that's exactly what happens. Basically, if you've been a devoted follower of a certain tradition or a religion or path, the priest or the big honcho basically will dub you and say, okay, now you're a master, or you're a lama, or you're a guru, or whatever you are. That's not how we become masterful. There is mastery that happens when we actually develop greater sense of authenticity and ability to perform that which others find difficult with a relative ease. That's my definition of mastery. That when you are capable of performing that which is difficult for other people with relative ease, well, you are more masterful than them.
Okay.
Now, it's not a black and white definition, though, meaning it's not like there is a certain stage of masters and you have to climb up on that stage to become master. It's just like we talked about spiritual awakening or self-realization. It's a journey of mastery. It's a journey of becoming more and more masterful with each and every step you take on this path, as opposed to a journey to mastery where there is mastery waiting for you at some point when you achieve pinnacle of your development. And so that basically means that in order to become masterful, we need to focus on that which works better. And what works better for you may not be the same as what works better for another person. So then we have to exercise our authenticity and literally test everything. And when we do that, then we have a first-hand experience of understanding why this works better and why this doesn't work as well. Then, of course, if we do more of that which works better, we get better results. And if we get better results over time, then other people start noticing that and say, wow, that person is really a master.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Now, the last question. Could you tell us about lineage transmission?
Yes, lineage transmission is one of the myths that has been persistent in many different religions and schools of thought, especially in the East. So much so that sometimes people say, well, there is this wonderful lineage. that is connected to this energy that is so pure and so profound. There's no other way to connect with that energy other than through this lineage. And so if you want to connect with that energy, well, you have to become indoctrinated or initiated into this particular school of thought or cult. And then if you're a good student, if you follow what the teacher or master tells you to do over and over again, you prove yourself worthy of receiving connection with that lineage. Well, that's basically what we call another form of cult.
So how many lineages do you have?
Only one.
Only one. And
Yes.
how did it get transmitted to you?
My grandfather taught me from a relatively young age simple things that I believe every kindergartner should be learning at that age. Basically how to stand, how to move, how to lift things, how to press things, how to pull things, how to project energy in different directions, and also how to deal with other people's energy projections, whether it's in the form of a punch or just a mental projection. And as I progressed, also he suggested that I would study with other teachers or his former students or friends or colleagues. And so basically it gave me an opportunity to glean a variety of different approaches and compare them side by side. Now that's the comparison that very few people do in this field of energy arts. Often instead of comparing things and testing and finding out what works best for them, people just assume on faith that whatever the master gives you is the best thing. Well, if whatever the master gives you is the best thing since sliced bread, you would never become a master. Because what made that person a master is that they actually discovered something that worked better for them than the old form, technique, or style, and they created their own. That's how people become masters. Well, how do you create something of your own? Well, you have to let go of your attachment to the old thing that wasn't working for you so well, even though it was bestowed upon you by the lineage holder or the master or whoever. So basically practicing detachment and not falling into the prey of a cult mentality is one of the ways people become masters. Now, nobody seems to be teaching that in our field. How do you become a master? Well, it's probably because most masters want to have a lot of students, but they're not particularly concerned about the students become masters. And what I realized a long time ago is that I really didn't feel like having a lot of students worshiping me or following me and emulating my moves, man ke see, man ke do type of thing. I'm much more interested in helping people journey along the path of mastery. And because I've been on this path myself, I kind of understand the pitfalls and stumbling blocks and know how to overcome them, and also know how to maintain continuity of attention, which is what we call mindfulness. So maintaining continuity of attention and persistence essentially is one of the key driving forces that keeps you going along this path, instead of following somebody else's steps that knows better how to be. It's basically one of those preposterous things that we learn how to let go of because nobody knows how we should be. They may know how they should be, and that's what makes them a master, perhaps. But no master knows how I should be or you should be. And what we do is we literally have to learn for ourselves how we should be, what we should be doing, and how. And when we become more authentic in that way, we become more masterful. And basically that's how mastery is acquired and perpetuated.
And how did you decide to become a spiritual master?
I was very curious, and I also experienced a significant amount of suffering. So a combination of suffering as a motivating force and curiosity as the catalyst for keeping yourself open-minded even in the face of adversity, I guess allowed me to continue connecting the dots, because I was motivated enough through my suffering to realize, well, if I don't connect the dots, if I don't see the cause and effect connections, I remain ignorant of the law of cause and effect, the law of karma. And that's the number one source of suffering. So if I don't want to continue experiencing suffering, I need to connect the dots. And that's basically where curiosity comes from, because the more you connect the dots, the more benefits you receive, the more your life becomes joyful and less suffering. And who wouldn't want that?
How difficult it is for you to be a spiritual teacher? And what is the best satisfaction in this work?
It's not really hard for me to be a spiritual teacher because I so much enjoy doing what I do, working with people who are amazing human beings and helping them become even more amazing. And so, in a sense, it's like the dream job. And if you do that and you also make a decent livelihood, well, who would want anything else? In a sense, it's like a dream job in terms of both helping people manifest and live their dreams. And then they actually turn around and help me manifest and live my dreams.
Thank you, Lama.
You are so
forgive
welcome.
me that I asked you 1,000 questions instead of 2 or 3.
All right, thank you so much, Carmen.
Thank you, Lama.
And for those of you who are maybe curious, Carmen Ionescu is a physician who comes from Romania but lives in the United States now, both an MD and ND, a naturopathic physician, and an amazing healer. So if you ever need a naturopathic physician's help, I would definitely recommend Carmen. You're so welcome. I hope you enjoyed this interview that covered quite a bit of unusual questions and also provided you some food for thought. If you want to dive deeper into the exploration of my teachings and perhaps to become a certified Qigong practitioner or a certified Qigong coach, you are more than welcome to check out the link below this video and visit Academy of Qigong website, where you can learn more about our group coaching programs, individual coaching programs, Qigong practitioner certification programs, and certification programs for Qigong coaches, in case you want to become a Qigong coach yourself. I welcome you to check them out and join our programs. I look forward to working with you.